Michigan and Ohio State. Just a couple facts as we head in. Fifth time in history that both teams are undefeated since they started playing on the final weekend of the regular season in 1935. Other occurrences, 1970. 1973, we are 50 years removed from the 1973 10-10 tie, controversy with the athletic director's vote. 2006, 1-2 game right after Bo Schembechler passed away, and then 2022, last year. So it's the first time ever that it's been 2 years in a row of 11-0, 11-0. Stakes were almost as high in 2021, both teams with one loss. So really kind of a 3-year stretch here that has, there are these little pockets, it feels like, in the rivalry where you basically have 20 years of dominance from Ohio State, right? That's not a little pocket, I guess. But, the 90s, Michigan has the edge. Right now, the last few years, Michigan has the edge. Ohio State's had the edge in several other decades in different years. And it feels like we're kind of in one of those right now, and that's why this is kind of so crucial. 13th meeting between the teams when both are ranked in the AP top 5. Michigan's won 4 of the last 6 when that's the case, but Ohio State has a 7-4-1 overall mark in those situations. Michigan has won 10 of the last 13 in which both teams were top 10. Michigan has won 21 straight home games overall, program's longest streak since 1969 to 1973, third longest in program history. Last home loss with fans in the stands came against Ohio State in 2019. Obviously, they dropped a few in the 2020 year at the Big House. But I want to start there, AB, with the home crowd, with the environment that we're going to get. I asked J.J. McCarthy about that on Monday, and he said it was cinema 2 years ago, the 2021 game. It was a movie. And sometimes, I've jokingly used that term, like, oh, man, tonight was a movie or whatever. Last night was a movie. That was a movie scene type of deal in 2021. The field storming, the snow falling. It was magical. JJ used that word as well. And you would expect, with everything that's gone on and the fact that the stakes are high, in and of themselves, that it's going to be very similar and a pretty revved up crowd on Saturday.
I think it has the chance to surpass what 2021 was, given everything that's transpired since then. And when you think back to that game, I remember for some reason I did there's a radio spot or some kind of interview at a bar downtown. So I did park downtown the day of that game. And I remember walking through, you walk through and then up towards the stadium. And, a lot of times you make that walk with headphones on. You're just trying to, it's cold. You got your hands in your pockets, your head's down. But that day I kind of made it a point to try and soak up the vibe a little bit. And there was, from the jump, something felt different about that day, even heading into the stadium. And then, of course, you get into the stadium. I like to do that, the walk around the concourse, or, last few years, you and I have kind of snuck down to level 3 and just kind of soaked in the atmosphere before the game. That day felt different. And it did feel like again, I feel like a lot of the cliche terms are often so overused, but that was, when I think of cinematic college football rivalry Saturday, that one is very clearly in my brain. And the fact there was a snowstorm after the game took me like 2.5 hours to get home, but
it took me like 45 minutes, and I live a mile away.
Yeah, you could have taken a bird scooter on ice and it would have gotten you there faster. So it's like, everything about that day was, it was something else. It was something special. And I know the Ann Arbor atmosphere, the Michigan Stadium crowd catches a lot of heat sometimes. It's not quite like going into the Lions' Den that is a lot of other places in the Big Ten. That's just how it's been. But that day it was, and I feel like Saturday it will be as well.
For big games, the Big House delivers. And really every stadium has those lulls for some of those lesser games. Like I went down to Texas BYU this year, and honestly, I was surprised at how quiet it was. Especially the things you hear about the South and, how electric those atmospheres was. And it was awesome. But the Big House is still up there, especially for the big games. So I think it's going to be a great environment on Saturday. And going back to that 2021 game, in retrospect, looking back on it, it made way too much sense that Michigan was able to win that game and that Michigan kind of flipped this rivalry over the last couple of years. Easy to say in hindsight.
Well, of course it does. Of course it does, Clay. They were stealing signs.
Well, that's not what I meant. But touche. So, I mean, to me, looking back that day, I agree with you. I had a similar feeling kind of before the game. I was joking that Ohio State looked all over the place in warmups and they looked tight. but they actually did. I was joking, but I was also like, I kind of believe this, watching their body language, watching them and everything, and it kind of came to fruition that day. So Michigan fans obviously hoping it is going to be similar on Saturday.